Hello, everybody. I am going to talk about the assignment Stages of Development for Child Development Semester 1. And with this assignment, I want to go over the 4 major parts to Piaget's theory to add a little bit more knowledge of what those stages entail and what he is talking about, how the cognitive part of everybody develops through those 4 stages. So first, what I want to talk about is that John Piaget focuses on children, and he really started his research and became interested with incorrect responses that children gave. And he realized that there was a lot to learn from those wrong answers. So he started studying and looking at children, and he thought that the way that children think and solve problems depended on which stage they were and how their development was going with their cognitive abilities. And so when we're talking about cognitive, what we are discussing is mental activities associated with remembering, knowing, or thinking. And so what Piaget did is that he came up with 4 stages. And the first stage he came up with is sensorimotor stage. And this stage happens between birth to 2 years old. And during this stage, Piaget says that the child really is starting to understand himself or herself. They start realizing that people are different, they're different than people, they're different than objects, kind of starting to understand how reality works. And during about the 10-month time, they develop what's called object permanency. And what this is that the child understands that things exist when you can't see them. So for example, if the rattle is taken away from them, once they develop this, they realize that the rattle is still there. Before this is developed, the child doesn't realize that that object is still there when they can't see it. So during the stage, playing peekaboo is a really good thing to help them develop this cognitive ability. With the sensorimotor stage, the child really starts learning through their actions and their reflexes and their motor skills, and they start learning that their actions can cause things to happen. So if they have a rattle in their hand and they shake it, they will start developing the ability to realize, oh, when I shake my hand, it starts making noise, so that they are causing something to happen. So that's the first stage, and a brief description of some of the things that develop throughout that first 2 years of life. The second stage that John Piaget discusses is preoperational. And this stage is about between 2 to 7 years old. And during this stage, the child cannot think abstractly yet. They need concrete situations and examples to be able to learn. And they can start classifying things in simple ways. So if you give them all of these round coins and they're different colors, they can classify them by putting them into different colors. If you give them like different shapes of wooden blocks, you can have them put all like the squares together, all the circles together. They're able to do that kind of activity during this stage. During this stage, their imagination is very strong, and they do a lot of make-believe play, might have some make-believe friends, and with their imagination being strong, pretend play is important, and they really do a lot of pretend play, which helps them develop their cognitive skills. During this stage, their language really starts to emerge. They're learning a lot of different words. They're being able to communicate a lot better, a lot of different ways. Their memory really starts forming in this stage, and they're able to see that there's a past and a future. This happened in the past, this is going to happen in the future. During this stage, the child is very egocentric, which means everything's about them. They see the world just through their perspective, and it's just about them. And so that is some of the main things that develop during the preoperational stage. The concrete operation stage is the third stage, and that happens between ages 7 to 11. And with this stage, some of the things that develop is the concept of conservation. And what this concept talks about is that the child can see that something stays the same, the quantity of something stays the same even with a different shape. So for example, if there's a cup that's short and fat, and then a cup that's tall and skinny, they're able to, and it's filled with water, they're able to see that it's the same amount of water even though it looks differently. With concrete operations, they can start creating logical structures, and so looking at what's going on around them and then thinking logically about what's going on. They're able to organize kind of their thoughts and come up with those structures. They start realizing that their emotions are different than other people's. So if they feel sad about a certain situation, they start realizing that maybe not everybody feels sad because of whatever just happened, that maybe other people have different emotions. So they're able to start thinking of others' perspectives, that perspectives are different based on the person and based on how that person takes in the situation. And with that, be that their thoughts are unique, that not everybody thinks the same way, that somebody might think something a little bit different. They're able to take the reasoning of a specific idea and then kind of use that to come up with a general reasoning. So that is some of the stuff that happens during that third stage of concrete operations. Now the fourth stage is formal operations, and it's age 11 plus. During this stage, the child can start thinking abstractly, and they no longer require concrete objects to make a judgment or to think of what's going to happen next. So they can start coming up with hypotheses and thinking about, if this happened, then maybe this will happen next. They are able to look at a situation or a problem and see that maybe there are multiple different ways of solving that situation. And they're able to start thinking about morals and ethics and different parts of the world. And they're able to take concepts they've learned in one content and they can apply them to others. So if they learn something about adding certain things in math, and they can take that concept and apply it to something else. And that's the fourth stage, formal operations. I just wanted to go through those 4 stages to be able to give you a more in-depth understanding of what happens during those 4 stages and how John Piaget says our brains develop cognitively throughout those 4 stages. And that will help you with your assignment stages of development, the discussion post. With this discussion post, you need to pick one of those 4 stages and then explain 2 ideas, 2 activities that could be done that would help promote positive growth within that stage. And you can look up those activities and get some ideas from online. And then in the discussion post, you need to discuss what those activities are and why they would be good for that stage that you have put them in. And then, just like any other discussion post, you need to respond to 1 to 2 of your classmates, explaining what did they do well, what did you see, what are some things you think about their post. And so you are taking the information of the stages that you've learned throughout this lesson, and then you are applying them to coming up with different activities that would be good for those stages.